Indus's luminous eyes widened as she caught sight of the peculiar protrusion between the human's legs. In her years of xenobiological study, she'd never encountered anything like it. The Rakari exploration vessel, Stargazer, had just entered Earth's solar system, marking a historic moment for both species. Indus, a junior xenobiologist with vibrant blue skin and bioluminescent markings, stood at the forefront of the small Rakari delegation. Her antenna twitched with excitement as their shuttle approached the human space station. Inside the station, human diplomat Sean Young straightened his uniform, unaware of the vast physiological differences that were about to create an interstellar incident. He took a deep breath, preparing to greet the first alien race humanity had ever encountered. The airlock hissed open. Indus stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her sense of protocol. Her gaze locked onto Sean, drinking in every detail of his alien form. The Rakari captain began formal introductions, but Indus barely heard the words. She moved closer to Sean, reaching out to touch his face. Alarm rippled through the assembled officials. Security teams from both sides tensed, hands hovering near weapons. The atmosphere crackled with potential conflict. Sean attempted to defuse the situation, taking a step back. His foot caught on a raised section of flooring, and he stumbled forward. Time seemed to slow as he collided with Indus, their bodies pressing together for a brief moment. In that instant, Indus felt something she'd never experienced before. A firm, unfamiliar shape pressed against her lower body. Her mind raced, categorizing the sensation and comparing it to her knowledge of Rakari anatomy. As Sean regained his balance and stepped away, Indus's shock manifested in a barrage of questions. What was that? Is that a natural part of your anatomy? How does it function? The human officials bristled at the intimate nature of her inquiries. The Rakari captain's face darkened, a clear sign of embarrassment in their species. The delicate balance of first contact teetered on the edge of disaster. Sean's mind raced, searching for a diplomatic solution. He needed to satisfy Indus's scientific curiosity without compromising human dignity or inflaming tensions further. The fate of future human-Rakari relations hung in the balance, all because of an accidental anatomical revelation. As security teams from both sides inched closer, fingers tightening on weapon grips, Sean realized he had seconds to prevent an interstellar conflict. He locked eyes with Indus, seeing not just an alien, but a fellow seeker of knowledge. In that moment, he knew that bridging their vast physiological differences would be key to fostering understanding between their species. The space station's recycled air seemed to thicken with tension. Every breath, every movement could tip the scales toward peace or conflict. Sean opened his mouth to speak, knowing his next words could shape the future of human-Rakari relations for generations to come. Sean took a deep breath, his mind racing to find the right words. Indus, he began, his voice calm and measured. I understand your curiosity. As a fellow scientist, I respect your desire for knowledge. However, there are more appropriate ways to conduct this type of research. The tension in the room eased slightly as Indus's antenna drooped, a sign of embarrassment. Captain Krell stepped forward, his deep voice rumbling through the station. We apologize for this breach of protocol. Perhaps we can arrange a more formal exchange of biological information at a later time. Sean nodded, seizing the opportunity. That's an excellent suggestion, Captain. In fact, I propose we establish a cultural exchange program to foster understanding between our species. The next few hours were a flurry of negotiations. Human and Rakari officials huddled in conference rooms, hashing out the details of Sean's proposal. Despite initial hesitation from both sides, the potential benefits of such a program became clear. As the discussions concluded, a tentative agreement was reached. 2 days later, Sean found himself aboard the Stargazer, leading a small group of human scientists and diplomats. The sleek corridors of the Rakari vessel hummed with an energy that sent shivers down his spine. At his side stood Indus, her earlier embarrassment replaced by almost unchecked excitement. The Stargazer's propulsion system utilizes a form of quantum entanglement, Indus explained as they moved through the engine room. Her words came fast, each sentence punctuated by a flash of her bioluminescent markings. It allows us to achieve faster-than-light travel without the need for traditional warp technology. Sean nodded, His own curiosity piqued. Fascinating. Earth scientists have theorized about such systems, but we've never managed to create a working model. As they continued their tour, Indus's questions became increasingly focused on human biology. Your skeletal structure seems so rigid, she observed. How do you manage complex movements? Sean answered as best he could, striving to maintain a balance between openness and professional boundaries. Our joints allow for a wide range of motion, he explained, and our muscles provide the necessary flexibility. Their path led them to the Stargazer's medical bay, a sterile white room filled with unfamiliar equipment. Dr. Zara, the ship's chief medical officer, greeted them with a series of chirps that Sean's translator rendered as a polite welcome. We would be honored if one of you would consent to a basic medical examination, Dr. Zara said, her large eyes blinking rapidly. It would greatly advance our understanding of human physiology. Sean stepped forward, recognizing the diplomatic importance of the moment. I volunteer, he said, ignoring the nervous flutter in his stomach. As Dr. Zara began her examination, using instruments that hummed and glowed in ways Sean had never seen, Indus watched with rapt attention. The doctor's professional demeanor slowly gave way to excitement as she discovered more about human biology. The placement of your organs is so different from ours, Dr. Zara exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. And your reproductive system? It's absolutely fascinating. Sean felt a blush creep up his neck as Dr. Zara and Indus launched into an animated discussion about human anatomy. He was about to interject when a piercing alarm cut through the air. Captain Krell burst into the medical bay, his normally composed features twisted with concern. A rogue asteroid has been detected on a collision course with the ship, he announced. We must perform an emergency maneuver immediately. The Stargazer lurched suddenly, throwing everyone off balance. Medical equipment clattered to the floor as the ship's artificial gravity struggled to compensate. Sean's body moved on instinct, reaching out to shield Indus from a falling tray of instruments. As the ship stabilized, Sean found himself pressed close to Indus, her alien features mere inches from his own. For a moment they stared at each other, a spark of something indefinable passing between them. Captain Krell's voice cut through the moment. The asteroid's trajectory has only been partially altered, he said, his tone grim. It now threatens your space station. Sean's mind raced, assessing the situation. He knew the Stargazer likely had the firepower to destroy the asteroid, but such a display of military might could jeopardize the fragile trust they'd built. Captain, Sean said, straightening up and releasing Indus, I have a proposal. What if we work together to divert the asteroid? We could combine Rakari technology with resources from our space station. Krell's antenna twitched, a sign of intense thought. That would require revealing certain capabilities to each other, he said slowly. Yes, Sean agreed, but it would also demonstrate our ability to cooperate in a crisis. Isn't that worth the risk? As Krell considered the proposal, Sean caught Indus's eye. She gave him a small nod, her luminous gaze filled with a mix of admiration and something deeper, more complex. The captain's communicator chirped, displaying a countdown to the asteroid's impact. They had minutes to decide, and the weight of 2 civilizations rested on their shoulders. Captain Krell's antenna twitched rapidly as he processed Sean's proposal. The countdown on his communicator continued its relentless march, each passing second amplifying the tension in the medical bay. Very well, Krell said, his voice a low rumble. We'll attempt this joint operation, but be aware, revealing our tractor beam technology is not a decision I make lightly. Sean nodded, relief washing over him. Thank you, Captain. I'll contact our station immediately. As Sean activated his communication device, Indus moved closer, her luminous eyes fixed on the human diplomat. She marveled at his quick thinking and willingness to trust the Rakari in this crisis. Colonel Marcus Steele, a gruff voice answered. What's the situation, young? Sean quickly outlined the plan, his words clipped and precise. We need to synchronize the station's maneuvering thrusters with the Stargazer's tractor beam. It's our best shot at diverting this asteroid. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Understood, Steele finally replied. We're powering up the thrusters now. But young, if this goes sideways... I know, sir, Sean said. We'll make it work. As Sean ended the call, Captain Krell turned to Indus. You've had the most interaction with the humans. I need you to work with Sean on coordinating our efforts. Indus's bioluminescent markings pulsed with excitement. Yes, Captain, I won't let you down. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Sean and Indus hurried to the Stargazer's control center, their footsteps echoing through the sleek corridors. As they entered, they were greeted by a holographic display of the approaching asteroid. We need to calculate the exact moment to engage both the tractor beam and the station's thrusters, Sean said, his eyes scanning the data scrolling across the screen. Indus nodded, her fingers flying over the alien controls. The asteroid's composition is making it difficult to get a solid lock with the tractor beam, she reported. We'll need to increase power to compensate. Captain Krell's voice came over the intercom. Diverting additional power to the tractor beam. Be advised, this will leave our shields at minimal strength. Sean's brow furrowed as he processed this new information. Colonel Steele, are you receiving this? Affirmative, Steele's voice crackled through the communication system. We're ready on our end, but our thrusters weren't designed for this kind of prolonged burn. We'll do what we can. As the asteroid loomed closer, Sean and Indus worked in tandem, their earlier awkwardness forgotten in the face of crisis. Their fingers danced across control panels, making split-second adjustments as they coordinated the efforts of both vessels. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the Stargazer. Warning, an automated voice announced. Tractor beam stress exceeding safety parameters. Before anyone could react, a loud crack resonated through the ship. On the holographic display, a small piece of the asteroid broke free, hurtling towards the Stargazer. Brace for impact, Captain Krell's voice boomed. Sean's eyes widened as he realized the fragment was headed straight for their section. Without thinking, he lunged towards Indus, pushing her clear of the impending impact zone. The ship shuddered violently as the asteroid fragment struck. Emergency force fields flickered to life, containing the worst of the damage. But the impact sent a power surge through the ship's systems, overloading control panels in a shower of sparks. Sean cried out in pain as the surge caught him, sending him sprawling across the floor. The acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air as emergency lights bathed the control center in an eerie red glow. Sean! Indus cried, rushing to his side. The human's face was contorted in pain, angry red burns visible where the power surge had struck him. We need to get you to the medical bay immediately. As Indus helped Sean to his feet, Captain Krell's voice came over the intercom, tight with tension. Report! What's our status? Indus glanced at the flickering displays. The tractor beam is still operational, Captain, but we've lost power to several key systems. And Sean is injured. There was a moment of silence before Krell responded. Understood. Get him to Dr. Zara. We'll continue the operation from the bridge. The journey to the medical bay was a blur of pain for Sean. He leaned heavily on Indus, her cool blue skin a stark contrast to the heat radiating from his burns. As they entered, Dr. Zara's eyes widened at the sight of the injured human. Place him on the examination table, she instructed, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. As Sean lay back, he could feel the ship vibrating with the strain of the continued operation. Dr. Zara began her examination, her movements quick and precise. However, as she attempted to treat the burns, she hesitated. This is unexpected, she muttered. The human physiology is reacting differently to our standard treatments. Indus stepped forward, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her concern. How so, Doctor? Dr. Zara's antenna twitched in concentration. The cellular response is unlike anything in our database. I'll need to modify our techniques to prevent further damage. As the doctor worked, the ship shuddered again. The asteroid diversion was entering its critical phase. Sean tried to sit up, his sense of duty warring with his body's pain. I need to get back, he groaned. They need me to coordinate. Indus gently but firmly pushed him back down. You've done your part, Sean. Let us handle the rest. As if in response to her words, Captain Krell's voice came over the intercom. Attention, all crew. We are making our final push to divert the asteroid. Brace for extreme maneuvers. The medical bay seemed to tilt as the Stargazer pushed its engines to the limit. Dr. Zara and Indus worked to secure equipment and keep Sean stable. For several tense moments, the only sounds were the straining of the ship's systems and the beeping of medical monitors. Then the shuddering stopped. A collective breath was held throughout the ship as they waited for news. Finally, Colonel Steele's voice broke the silence, transmitted shipwide. "This is the human space station. The asteroid has been successfully diverted. Repeat, the asteroid has been diverted. Well done, everyone." A cheer went up throughout the Stargazer, the sound of Rakari celebration mingling with human laughter from the station's transmission. In the medical bay, Indus's bioluminescent markings pulsed with joy and relief. Sean looked up at her, a weak smile on his face despite the pain. "We did it," he said softly. Indus nodded, her large eyes filled with a mix of emotions Sean couldn't quite decipher. "Yes, we did, together." As Dr. Zara continued her treatment, adapting her techniques to Sean's unique physiology, the full impact of what they'd accomplished began to sink in. Human and Rakari, working in concert, had faced a crisis and emerged victorious. The asteroid crisis was over, but as Sean looked at Indus, he realized that this was just the beginning. The real challenge, building lasting understanding and cooperation between their species, lay ahead. And somehow he knew that his connection with this fascinating alien scientist would play a crucial role in shaping that future. Months passed, and the asteroid crisis faded into memory as a new chapter in human-Rakari relations began to unfold. The success of their joint effort had opened doors, and soon plans for a formal cultural exchange program took shape. Sean Young stood before a mirror in his quarters aboard the Stargazer, adjusting the collar of his diplomatic uniform. The burns from the asteroid incident had long since healed, leaving only faint scars as a reminder of that pivotal day. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called out. The door slid open to reveal Indus, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with a soft, excited glow. "Are you ready, Sean? The shuttle to Zeria leaves in 20 minutes. Sean nodded, a mix of nervousness and anticipation coursing through him. "As ready as I'll ever be to visit an alien world." As they made their way to the shuttle bay, Sean couldn't help but notice how Indus's eyes kept darting to him, filled with an intense curiosity that had only grown since their first meeting. Her fascination with humans, particularly Sean, had led her to volunteer as the primary liaison for the Earth delegation. The journey to Zeria was a blur of final briefings and last-minute preparations. When the shuttle finally broke through the planet's atmosphere, Sean and his team pressed against the viewports, awestruck by the alien landscape below. Massive floating cities drifted serenely above a terrain covered in bioluminescent flora. The plants pulsed with rhythmic patterns of light, creating a mesmerizing display that seemed to ripple across the planet's surface. "It's beautiful," Sean breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. Indus beamed with pride. "Wait until you see it up close." The shuttle docked at one of the floating cities, and as the doors opened, Sean was hit with a wave of alien scents and sounds. The air was thick with a sweet, almost electrical tang that made his skin tingle. A group of elaborately dressed Rakari waited to greet them. Their antennae twitched in synchronized patterns as they performed a series of graceful gestures that Sean recognized as a formal welcome. "The Rakari High Council," Indus whispered, nodding towards the group. Sean stepped forward, bowing deeply in the Rakari manner they had practiced. "Esteemed members of the High Council," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "On behalf of Earth, I thank you for this opportunity. We come seeking friendship and the exchange of knowledge between our peoples." He presented a data crystal containing Earth's proposal for a comprehensive knowledge exchange program. The lead council member, a tall Rakari with intricate golden markings, accepted it with a solemn nod. "We welcome you, humans, to Zeria," the council member announced, his voice resonating with a musical quality. "We shall consider your proposal with great care. For now, please enjoy our hospitality." As the formal greetings concluded, Sean noticed a ripple of unease pass through some of the council members. He caught fragments of their whispered conversation. "Cultural contamination. Proceed with caution." Indus guided Sean and his team to their assigned quarters in a nearby Rakari community. As they walked, Sean found himself constantly distracted by the alien architecture and the way Rakari citizens moved about their daily lives. "Remember," Indus cautioned as they approached their lodgings, "Rakari social norms are quite different from human ones. Try to observe and follow our lead." Sean nodded, but even with the warning, he was unprepared for the cultural differences that awaited them. In the communal living space, Rakari moved in intricate patterns, their bodies often in close proximity, or even intertwining in ways that would be considered intimate by human standards. One Rakari approached Sean, its antenna extending to brush against his cheek, in what he later learned was a standard greeting. Sean instinctively stepped back, causing a ripple of confusion among the nearby Rakari. Indus quickly intervened, explaining the misunderstanding to both parties. "Humans have different concepts of personal space," she clarified to her fellow Rakari. Then turning to Sean with a glimmer of amusement in her eyes, she added, "And Sean, for us, that greeting is as casual as a handshake." The next few days were a whirlwind of cultural immersion. Sean and his team struggled to adapt to Rakari customs, resulting in several awkward but ultimately humorous incidents. During one meal, Sean accidentally used a utensil reserved for grooming, much to the shocked amusement of their hosts. As the week progressed, Sean found himself spending more and more time with Indus. Her insatiable curiosity about humans matched his own fascination with Rakari culture. One evening, as they watched the bioluminescent flora pulse beneath the floating city, Indus turned to Sean with an excited gleam in her eyes. "There's a special event tonight," she said, "a fertility ritual that's central to our culture. Would you like to observe?" Sean hesitated for a moment, his scientific curiosity warring with his sense of propriety. "Is that appropriate?" Indus's antenna twitched in what Sean had come to recognize as amusement. "Of course, it's an important aspect of our society. It would be valuable data for your cultural exchange program." Convinced by her argument, Sean agreed. As they made their way to the ritual site, he couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The ritual took place in a large open-air amphitheater. Rakari of all ages gathered, their bioluminescent markings glowing in synchronization with the pulsing flora around them. As the ceremony began, Sean found himself captivated by the intricate dances and haunting, otherworldly music. However, as the ritual progressed, Sean began to shift uncomfortably. The movements of the participants became increasingly intimate, their bodies intertwining in ways that made the earlier greetings seem positively chaste by comparison. Indus, noticing Sean's discomfort, leaned in close. "Is something wrong? You seem distressed." Sean swallowed hard, trying to maintain his composure. "It's just more intimate than I expected." Indus's antenna twitched with curiosity. "Fascinating. Tell me, how do humans approach mating and reproduction? Are your practices very different?" Before Sean could formulate a diplomatic response, his communication device buzzed urgently. Grateful for the interruption, he answered, finding Dr. Zara's concerned face on the screen. "Sean, we need to talk," the doctor said, her usual calm demeanor replaced by worry. "I've discovered something alarming about the effects of Zephyria's atmosphere on human biology." As Dr. Zara explained her findings, Sean felt a chill run down his spine. The implications of what she was saying could jeopardize the entire mission. He looked at Indus, who was watching him with growing concern, and realized that the challenges they had faced so far were nothing compared to what lay ahead. The fertility ritual continued around them, oblivious to the potential crisis brewing. Sean knew he had to act quickly, but as he met Indus's questioning gaze, he also knew that the next steps he took would have profound consequences for both their species and their future. Sean's mind raced as he processed Dr. Zara's urgent message. The doctor's face on the small screen looked drawn with worry, her antenna twitching nervously. "The atmospheric composition is causing subtle but potentially dangerous changes to human cellular structure," Dr. Zara explained, her voice low and hurried. "Long-term exposure could lead to irreversible alterations. We need to get you and your team off-planet immediately." Sean's heart sank. He glanced at Indus, who was watching him with growing concern, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with anxiety. "Indus, we have a problem," Sean said, his voice tight. Dr. Zara says we need to leave Zeria, now. Indus's antenna drooped slightly. But the cultural exchange program may have to wait, Sean finished, feeling a pang of regret. He turned back to the communication device. Dr. Zara, I'm contacting Captain Krell for an emergency extraction. We'll need... Suddenly, the device crackled with static, and the screen went dark. Sean frowned, tapping it frantically. Dr. Zara? Captain Krell? Anyone there? A commotion from the entrance of the amphitheater caught their attention. A group of Rakari burst in, their markings flashing aggressively. At their head was a tall, imposing figure Sean recognized as Vex, a vocal opponent of human-Rakari cooperation. The humans seek to flee. Vex's voice boomed across the space, silencing the ritual. They come to our world, learn our secrets, and now attempt to abandon us. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the crowd. Sean felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him, a mixture of confusion, anger, and fear, evident in their glowing patterns. Indus stepped forward, her own markings pulsing defiantly. Vex, you do not speak for all Rakari. The humans are our guests. Silence, traitor, Vex snarled. Your infatuation with these aliens blinds you to the threat they pose. Sean's mind raced. They needed to get out of there, fast. He leaned close to Indus, speaking in a low, urgent tone. Is there another way out of here? Indus's antenna twitched as she considered their options. Yes, she whispered back. There's a transportation hub nearby. If we can reach it, we might be able to secure passage off-planet. As Vex continued to rile up the crowd, Sean signaled to his team. They began to edge towards the amphitheater's rear exit, trying to blend in with the confused Rakari spectators. Just as they reached the exit, a shout went up. Stop them! Sean and his team broke into a run, Indus leading the way through the twisting, organic architecture of the floating city. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of pursuit, Vex's followers giving chase. As they rounded a corner, a stun blast sizzled past Sean's ear, leaving an acrid smell in the air. They're shooting at us, he yelled. Indus grabbed his arm, pulling him down a narrow side passage. This way! The research facility ahead has reinforced doors. We can take shelter there. They sprinted towards a large domed building, its surface covered in pulsating bioluminescent patterns. Indus pressed her hand to a scanner, and the doors slid open. The group tumbled inside, and Indus quickly sealed the entrance behind them. Panting, Sean looked around the facility. Banks of strange, organic-looking computers lined the walls, and in the center of the room stood a series of large, cylindrical tanks filled with a glowing liquid. What is this place? Sean asked, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. Indus hesitated, her markings dimming slightly. It's a top-secret research facility. I'm not supposed to know about it, but I've heard rumors. Before she could elaborate, one of the tanks caught Sean's eye. He moved closer, peering into the glowing liquid. What he saw made his blood run cold. Floating inside was a small embryonic form. It looked almost human, but not quite. The proportions were slightly off, and there were distinct Rakari features, visible even at this early stage of development. Indus, Sean said, his voice barely above a whisper. What am I looking at? Indus moved to his side, her large eyes wide with shock. I don't believe it. They actually did it. Did what? Sean pressed, a sinking feeling in his stomach. Created a hybrid, Indus replied, her voice a mix of awe and horror. A being with both human and Rakari DNA. The implications hit Sean like a physical blow. The Rakari had been experimenting with human genetic material, likely obtained during their initial medical examinations. This was a massive violation of trust, one that could shatter the fragile alliance between their species. Outside, they could hear Vex and his followers attempting to breach the facility's defenses. They didn't have much time. Sean's mind raced, weighing their options. The existence of this project could destroy everything they'd worked for, but it could also be their way out of this mess. He turned to Indus, his expression grave. We need to secure this data, all of it. It might be our only bargaining chip to get off this planet and force both sides back to the negotiating table. Indus nodded, her antenna twitching with purpose. She moved to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the alien interface. As Sean watched Indus work, he couldn't help but notice how her movements seemed slightly off. Her usual grace diminished. He realized with a start that she was exhibiting some of the same symptoms that Dr. Zara had warned about in humans. "Indus," he said softly, "are you feeling all right?" She paused, turning to look at him with a mix of confusion and concern. I'm not sure. I feel strange. Off balance." The implications of this development were staggering. If Zephiria's atmosphere was affecting Indus as well, it meant that the biological differences between their species might not be as insurmountable as they had thought. A loud bang from the entrance snapped them back to the present danger. Vex's voice carried through the door, filled with rage and tenacity. "We know you're in there, humans. You cannot escape. Surrender now, and perhaps the High Council will show mercy." Sean met Indus's gaze, seeing his own purpose mirrored in her alien eyes. They both knew that surrender wasn't an option. With the hybrid research data in their possession, they had stumbled upon something that could either doom or save the relationship between their species. As Indus finished downloading the data, Sean activated his emergency beacon, hoping that somehow Captain Krell and the Stargazer would find a way to reach them. They needed to find a way out of the facility and off the planet, all while protecting the explosive information they now carried. The sound of the facility's outer defenses beginning to fail echoed through the room. Sean and Indus shared a look of drive. Whatever came next, they would face it together, two beings from different worlds united by a common goal and a growing bond that transcended their biological differences. With the downloaded data secure and the angry mob at their doorstep, Sean and Indus prepared for their next move, knowing that the fate of two worlds now rested in their hands. Time was running out, and they needed to act fast. "We need to move," Sean said, his voice tight with urgency. "Vex and his followers won't give up easily." Indus nodded, her antenna twitching nervously. "There's an emergency exit at the back of the facility. It leads to a transportation hub." As they made their way through the maze of corridors, the sound of Vex's assault on the main doors grew louder. Sean's team moved swiftly, with Dr. Zara bringing up the rear, her medical kit clutched tightly to her chest. They burst out of the facility into the humid Zephirian air, the bioluminescent flora pulsing around them. Sean activated his emergency beacon once more, hoping against hope that Captain Krell would be able to reach them. The group sprinted towards the transportation hub, their footsteps echoing on the organic pathways of the floating city. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of Vex's loyalists, their markings glowing aggressively in the dim light. "Stop them!" one of the Rakari shouted, raising a weapon. Sean and his team dove for cover as energy blasts sizzled past them. Indus, her movement slightly off balance, stumbled and fell. Sean rushed to her side, pulling her behind a large pulsating plant. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Indus nodded weakly. "I'm fine. We need to keep moving." As they prepared to make a run for it, the air around them began to shimmer and distort. A low hum filled the air, growing in intensity until it was almost deafening. "What's happening?" Dr. Zara shouted over the noise. Suddenly, the world around them erupted in chaos. The bioluminescent plants flickered erratically, and the Rakari attackers stumbled, their weapons malfunctioning. Sean realized with a jolt that this must be Captain Krell's atmospheric disturbance. "Now's our chance," he yelled. "Let's go!" They ran through the disoriented crowd of Rakari, taking advantage of the confusion. As they approached the transportation hub, Sean spotted a familiar face in the crowd, a Rakari scientist he had met during the cultural exchange program. "Lyra," he called out, "we need your help." The Rakari turned, her antenna twitching in recognition. Without hesitation, she moved to join them, her markings pulsing with concern. "What's going on, Sean?" she asked as they entered the hub. "No time to explain fully," Sean panted. "We need to get to a secure location. Is there anywhere nearby that's isolated?" Lyra's eyes widened in understanding. "There's an old research outpost near the equator. It's been abandoned for years, but it should still be functional." "Perfect," Sean said. "Can you get us there?" Lyra nodded, quickly moving to a control panel, Her fingers flew over the interface, and moments later, a sleek transport vessel emerged from a docking bay. As they boarded the vessel, Sean could hear the sounds of pursuit growing closer. Vex's voice carried over the din, filled with rage and perseverance. "Hurry!" Sean urged as Lyra initiated the launch sequence. The vessel shot forward, leaving the floating city behind. As they sped towards the equator, Sean looked out at the alien landscape below. The atmospheric disturbance had created a stunning light show, with the bioluminescent flora pulsing in chaotic patterns. "We're approaching the outpost," Lyra announced after what felt like hours. The vessel touched down on a small landing pad next to a dome-shaped structure. Overgrown with Zephirian vegetation, the outpost looked like it had been reclaimed by the planet itself. As they disembarked, Sean turned to Lyra. "Thank you. You should go back before you get implicated in this." Lyra's antenna twitched with persistence. "No, I want to help. Whatever's happening, I believe in the importance of our alliance." Sean nodded gratefully, and the group made their way into the outpost. Inside, they found a space filled with dust-covered equipment and long-dormant computer terminals. Dr. Zara immediately set to work, using the outpost's limited medical facilities to examine the team. "The atmospheric effects are progressing," she said, her voice tight with concern. "We need to find a way to stabilize our condition." As Sean helped Indus settle into a chair, his eyes fell on an old piece of equipment in the corner. It looked different from the other Rakari technology, older, more robust. "Indus," he said, pointing to the device. "What's that?" Indus's eyes widened in recognition. "It's an old planetary communication device. It operates on a different frequency than our current systems." An idea began to form in Sean's mind. "Could we use it to broadcast a message across the planet?" Indus nodded slowly. "Theoretically, yes, but why?" Sean's expression hardened with grit. "Because we need to tell our side of the story. If we can reach the Rakari population directly, we might be able to change the narrative." As Indus and Lyra worked to get the old communication device operational, Sean and Dr. Zara huddled together, crafting a message that could potentially save not just their mission, but the future of human-Rakari relations. Outside, the atmospheric disturbance continued to rage, but inside the old outpost, a small group of humans and Rakari worked together, united by a common purpose and the hope of a shared future. The old communication device hummed to life, its archaic display flickering with static. Sean took a deep breath, preparing to broadcast their message to the Rakari population. But before he could begin, a blinding light flooded the outpost, accompanied by a deafening roar. "What's happening?" Dr. Zara shouted, shielding her eyes. As the light faded, Sean realized they were no longer in the abandoned outpost. The familiar organic architecture of a Rakari city surrounded them, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. "We're in Lumina," Indus said, her voice filled with awe and confusion. "The capital city." Before they could process their sudden relocation, a group of Rakari in official-looking attire approached. Their leader, a tall figure with intricate markings, stepped forward. "I am Counselor Nexus," he announced. "You've been brought here for your safety and for urgent medical attention. Please, follow us." Still disoriented, Sean and his team were ushered into a vast, domed structure, the Rakari Central Medical Facility. The interior was a marvel of biotechnology, with living walls that seemed to breathe and pulse with energy. Dr. Zara's eyes widened as she took in the advanced medical equipment. "This is incredible," she murmured, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her concern. A team of Rakari medical specialists greeted them, their antenna twitching with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. They were quickly divided into separate examination rooms, each equipped with devices that looked more like works of art than medical instruments. Sean found himself lying on a spongy, organic-looking bed as a Rakari doctor hovered over him, manipulating holographic displays that showed detailed scans of his body. "Fascinating," the doctor muttered. "The physiological changes have stabilized, but they haven't reversed. It's as if your body has found a new equilibrium." In the adjacent room, Indus underwent a similar examination. Through the translucent partition, Sean could see her markings pulsing erratically, mirroring his own elevated heart rate. Hours passed as the medical team conducted their tests. Finally, Dr. Zara emerged from a conference with the Rakari specialists, her face a mix of excitement and concern. "Sean Indus," she called, gesturing for them to join her. "We've made a remarkable discovery." As they gathered around a large three-dimensional holographic display, Dr. Zara explained, "The changes in your bodies have created a unique biological interface between human and Rakari physiology. It's unprecedented. Your cellular structures are adapting to each other in ways we never thought possible." The implications of this revelation hung heavy in the air. Sean glanced at Indus, noticing how her antenna twitched in sync with his own quickening pulse. Their moment of contemplation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Through the facility's large windows, they could see a crowd gathering in the central plaza. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the interior of a vast amphitheater, the Rakari High Council chamber. Counselor Nexus appeared on the screen, his voice resonating through the medical facility. "Esteemed colleagues, we face an unprecedented situation. The human delegation and one of our own have undergone significant physiological changes. We must decide how to proceed." The council chamber erupted into debate. Some counselors called for immediate quarantine, while others saw potential for groundbreaking research. The arguments grew heated, with impassioned pleas from both sides. As Sean watched the debate unfold, a familiar face appeared on a separate communication channel. It was Captain Krell, his expression grave. "Sean, I've received new orders from Earth Command," Krell said, his voice tight. "They're demanding your immediate return. They're concerned about potential biological contamination." Sean felt a knot form in his stomach. The thought of leaving now, with so much uncommitment, was unthinkable. He looked at Indus, seeing his own conflict reflected in her large, expressive eyes. Before he could respond, a group of Rakari scientists burst into the room, their markings pulsing with excitement. "We have a proposal," their leader announced, her antenna quivering. "A convergence chamber, a controlled environment where humans and Rakari can safely coexist and interact without risk of further uncontrolled changes." The concept sparked intense discussion among both the human delegation and the Rakari present. It was a bold idea, fraught with unknowns but filled with potential. "It would require volunteers," the Rakari scientist continued, her gaze sweeping the room. Without hesitation, Sean stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said, his voice firm. Indus moved to stand beside him, her markings glowing with intensity. "As will I," she declared. As preparations for the convergence chamber experiment began, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security forces rushed past, their weapons at the ready. "Intruders detected," a voice announced over the facility's communication system. "Suspected members of Vex's faction. All personnel enact security protocols immediately." Sean and Indus exchanged a look of concern. Even here in the heart of Rakari civilization, danger lurked. As chaos erupted around them, they realized that their journey, and the future of human-Rakari relations, was not nearly finished. The facility plunged into lockdown mode, its organic walls sealing off corridors and rooms. Sean, Indus, and the others found themselves trapped in the medical lab, the sounds of conflict echoing from beyond the sealed doors. Doors. Sean's heart raced as he assessed their options. The medical lab, once a sanctuary of scientific discovery, now felt like a trap. "We need to get to the convergence chamber," Dr. Zara said urgently, her eyes darting between her colleagues and the sealed exit. "It's our best chance for safety and continuing our work." Counselor Nexus nodded, his antenna twitching with commitment. "I can override the lockdown protocols. We'll make our way there together." With a series of precise gestures, Nexus manipulated the organic interface on the wall. The door unsealed with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor bathed in pulsating red emergency lights. The group moved swiftly through the facility, Rakari security forces providing escort. The sounds of conflict grew louder as they approached the central atrium. Suddenly, a group of armed insurgents rounded the corner, their weapons raised. "Get down!" Sean shouted, pulling Indus behind a curved support structure. A firefight erupted, energy bolts sizzling through the air. The security forces engaged the attackers, creating a protective barrier for Sean and the others. "This way," Lyra called. gesturing toward a side passage. "It's a maintenance tunnel. It'll lead us directly to the convergence chamber." They crawled through the narrow passage, the organic walls seeming to contract around them. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a vast circular room dominated by a translucent dome. The convergence chamber stood before them, a marvel of human and Rakari engineering. Its walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, mimicking the forests of Zeria. Despite the chaos unfolding in the facility, the chamber exuded an aura of calm and possibility. Dr. Zara rushed to the control panel, her fingers flying over the interface. "The chamber is ready," she announced. "Sean, Indus, you need to enter now. It's the safest place for you, and we can continue the experiment." Sean hesitated, looking at Indus. Her markings pulsed with a mix of anticipation and concern. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Indus nodded, her large eyes reflecting the chamber's glow. "We've come too far to turn back now. Whatever happens, we face it together." With a shared look of understanding, they approached the chamber's airlock. As they stepped inside, the door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, cutting off the sounds of conflict from the outside world. Inside the chamber, Sean and Indus found themselves enveloped in a carefully calibrated atmosphere. The air felt different, lighter, yet somehow more substantial. As they moved deeper into the space, their bodies began to respond to the environment. Sean gasped as he noticed a soft blue glow emanating from his skin. Looking at Indus, he saw that she too was glowing, her body bathed in a vibrant gold light. Their bioluminescence pulsed in sync with the patterns on the chamber walls, creating a mesmerizing display. "Incredible," Sean breathed, examining his glowing hands. Indus's antenna twitched with excitement. "I can feel the change happening. It's like our bodies are harmonizing with each other and the environment." From the control room, Dr. Zara and the joint team of human and Rakari scientists monitored their vital signs. Streams of data flowed across holographic displays, revealing rapid changes in both subjects' physiology. Sean's respiratory system is adapting to process Zephyrian atmospheric compounds, one of the Rakari scientists observed, his antenna quivering with excitement. Dr. Zara nodded, her eyes fixed on another display. And Indus's circulatory system is becoming more compatible with Earth-like conditions. The rate of adaptation is unprecedented. As the experiment progressed, Sean and Indus began to notice something extraordinary. Their heightened biological compatibility had unlocked a unique form of nonverbal communication. Subtle shifts in their bioluminescence allowed them to convey basic emotions and thoughts. Sean concentrated, focusing on a feeling of wonder and excitement. His blue glow intensified, pulsing in a distinct pattern. To his amazement, Indus's gold luminescence responded, mirroring his pattern before shifting to convey her own sense of awe. "This is incredible," Sean said aloud, his voice filled with wonder. "It's like we're connected on a whole new level." Indus's markings pulsed with agreement. "Our bodies have found a way to bridge the gap between our species. The possibilities are—" Her words were cut short as the chamber suddenly lurched. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls began to flicker erratically, and the air grew thick and heavy. "What's happening?" Sean called out, struggling to breathe. Dr. Zara's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with concern. "The environmental controls are malfunctioning. We're trying to stabilize them, but you need to hold on. The chamber is cycling through extreme conditions." Sean and Indus found themselves plunged into a battle for survival. The atmosphere shifted rapidly, alternating between the harsh conditions of Zeria and the oxygen-rich environment of Earth. Their newly developed abilities were put to the ultimate test. As the air grew thin and cold, mimicking Zephyria's upper atmosphere, Sean felt his lungs burning, but then, drawing on some newfound instinct, he focused on the memory of Zephirian air. His body responded, adjusting its oxygen absorption rate. He took a deep breath, relief flooding through him as his lungs filled with life-giving air. Beside him, Indus struggled as the atmosphere swung to Earth-like conditions, the increased oxygen overwhelming her Rakari physiology. Sean reached out, grasping her hand. Through their touch, he conveyed the sensation of breathing Earth's air, guiding her body's adaptation. Their bioluminescent communication intensified as they worked together to survive the chaotic environment. Pulses of blue and gold light danced between them, conveying support, encouragement, and vital information about the changing conditions. As the crisis reached its peak, something extraordinary happened. Sean and Indus's bodies began to synchronize, their individual glows merging into a dazzling display of light and color. The chamber filled with a harmonious blend of blue and gold, pulsing with a single unified rhythm. In the control room, alarms blared as sensors struggled to process the unprecedented event unfolding within the chamber. Dr. Zara and her team watched in awe as the holographic displays showed Sean and Indus's biosignatures aligning, forming a new, hybrid pattern. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined," Dr. Zara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're not just adapting, they're evolving." As the environmental systems finally stabilized, Sean and Indus stood at the center of the chamber, their bodies still glowing with the combined blue-gold light. They looked at each other, a profound understanding passing between them without the need for words. The airlock hissed open, and Dr. Zara rushed in, followed by a team of medical personnel. As they began to examine Sean and Indus, the full extent of their transformation became clear. "This is remarkable," one of the Rakari doctors exclaimed, studying a handheld scanner. "They've developed a completely new organ, a gland that allows for rapid environmental adaptation." Dr. Zara nodded, her expression a mix of scientific excitement and deep emotion. "You two have done more than just survive the experiment. You've opened the door to a new era of human-Rakari cooperation." As Sean and Indus stepped out of the convergence chamber, they found themselves forever changed. The facility around them still bore the scars of the recent conflict, but in the faces of the humans and Rakari gathered to witness their emergence, they saw hope for a brighter future. Counselor Nexus approached, his antenna twitching with a mix of awe and respect. "What you have achieved here today goes beyond science. You have shown us the true potential of our two species working as one." Sean and Indus stood side by side, their bodies still faintly glowing, a living symbol of unity between their worlds. As they looked out at the gathered crowd, they knew that their journey, and the journey of their united species, was only just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.